used to think that if something was wrong in a marriage, you'd feel it. Fights, screaming, silence, something obvious. But the truth is, sometimes love doesn't break. It fades, and you don't notice it until it's already gone. I still remember the exact moment I realized my marriage wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't during a fight. It wasn't when she forgot our anniversary. It wasn't even when she stopped saying, "I love you," before bed. It was when I looked at my wife and felt like I was standing next to a stranger. Someone who knew everything about me and still chose not to care. How we started, I met her when I wasn't even looking for anything serious. She laughed easily. She listened, really listened. When I talked, she made me feel like I mattered just by being in the room. We moved fast. Everyone said we did. But when you're in love, speed feels like certainty. We got married 2 years later. Nothing fancy. Small ceremony. Close friends. I remember standing there thinking, this is it. I did it right. When things started to change, marriage didn't ruin us overnight. It happened slowly. She started working longer hours. I told myself she was just ambitious. She stopped asking how my day was. I told myself we were just comfortable. We stopped having deep conversations. I told myself that was normal after years together. Every excuse felt reasonable at the time. That's the dangerous part. The distance I ignored. There was a point when I realized we were living parallel lives. Same house, same bed, different worlds. She would sit next to me scrolling on her phone, smiling at messages she never explained. If I asked who she was texting, she'd say, "Just a friend from work." And I believed her. Because trusting your spouse feels like the bare minimum requirement to love someone. The night that changed everything, it was late. She had fallen asleep on the couch. Her phone buzzed. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. I just wanted to turn off the sound. But when I picked it up, the screen lit up with the message preview, "I miss you. Today felt empty without you." My stomach dropped. No name. Just a heart emoji. I stood there frozen, holding a phone that suddenly felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. What I found, I shouldn't have opened it. But I did, not because I wanted drama, because my marriage suddenly felt like it was slipping through my fingers. The messages weren't explicit. That somehow made them worse. Inside jokes, emotional support, good morning texts, things that used to belong to us. She hadn't cheated physically. Not yet. But emotionally? She had already left. Confrontation without screaming when she woke up. I didn't yell. I asked calmly, "Who is he?" She didn't deny it. She didn't even look surprised. That's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. She said, "I didn't plan for it to happen." I said, "But you let it continue." Silence. That silence said everything. What hurt the most, it wasn't that she liked someone else. It was that she stopped choosing me. She told me she felt seen by him, that he listened, that he made her feel alive again. I wanted to scream, "I'm right here," but I realized something terrifying. She wasn't talking to me. She was explaining why she had already left emotionally. The question I couldn't answer, she asked me something that night. "Do you really think we've been happy?" I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. Because deep down, I knew the answer. We weren't unhappy. We were just absent. Where this left me, she said she needed time to think. She went to stay with a friend. I stayed in the house we built together, surrounded by memories that suddenly felt like lies. I kept replaying every moment, asking myself, when did I stop being enough? When did she stop loving me? Was I ever really her choice? Or just her comfort? And this is only the beginning. I thought this was the worst part, because what I discovered later made those messages feel harmless in comparison. What she told me next changed how I see love, marriage, and trust forever. And it forced me to decide something I never imagined I'd have to choose. The house felt different after she left. Not empty, quiet in a way that made my thoughts louder. I kept expecting to hear her keys at the door, her footsteps in the hallway, the soft sound of her phone hitting the nightstand before bed. None of it happened. Instead, I sat alone with questions I had avoided for years. The waiting. She said she needed a few days. Those days stretched into a week. I didn't beg. I didn't call every hour. Not because I was strong, but because I was afraid of what I might hear. Every message from her felt carefully measured. Short, polite, distant, like she was already practicing how to talk to me as an ex, or playing the past with nothing to distract me. Memories started resurfacing. Moments I once considered small suddenly felt huge. Times she tried to talk, and I brushed it off. Times she wanted closeness, and I chose convenience. I used to think love was built on big gestures. I was wrong. Love dies in the small moments you choose to ignore. The conversation I kept avoiding when she finally agreed to meet, it wasn't at home. She suggested a cafe. Neutral ground. That alone hurt more than I expected. She looked the same but different. Calmer. Like someone who had already made peace with a hard decision. What she confessed, I asked her the question that had been eating me alive. How long? She didn't pretend to misunderstand. Months, she said quietly. Not weeks, months. She told me the emotional connection started as friendship. Someone who listened without distraction. Someone who noticed when she was tired. Someone who asked questions and waited for the answers. I felt sick because none of that sounded extraordinary. It sounded like me years ago. The truth that hurt the most, she looked at me and said, I tried to come back to you so many times. That sentence shattered something inside me. She explained how she would pull away from him, try to reconnect with me, and feel nothing change. Each time she felt more invisible. Each time it made her feel stupid for hoping. Why she didn't leave sooner, I asked her why she stayed. She said something I wasn't ready to hear. Because leaving someone who isn't cruel is harder than leaving someone who is. I wasn't abusive. I wasn't unfaithful. I wasn't a villain. I was just emotionally absent. And that made it confusing for both of us. The other man, I finally asked about him. She said there was no physical relationship. I believed her. But she admitted something worse. She had imagined a future with him. Not in detail, just enough to feel hope again. Hope that wasn't connected to me. The choice in front of me, she didn't come to that meeting to apologize. She came to be honest. She said she didn't know what she wanted yet, but she knew she couldn't go back to pretending everything was fine. I realized then that I wasn't fighting another man. I was fighting the version of me she had already given up on. What I didn't say, there were so many things I wanted to say, that I could change, that I could be better, that I just needed another chance. But I also knew words were cheap now. I had spent years proving I wouldn't notice until it was too late. The walk back to my car, when we stood up to leave, she hesitated. For a moment, it felt like she might reach for my hand. She didn't. That small hesitation hurt more than any argument we'd ever had. Alone with the truth driving home, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at myself for assuming love would survive on autopilot, for confusing comfort with connection, for waiting until someone else reminded her what being seen felt like. And then she said this later that night. She texted me one sentence. I don't want to hurt you, but I don't want to keep lying to myself either. I stared at that message for a long time, because I knew what it meant. Something had to end, and I wasn't sure it would be the right thing. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying her words in my head. Like if I listened hard enough, I'd find a version of them that didn't mean what they clearly meant. But there wasn't one. By morning, I understood something I had been avoiding for months. Love doesn't end when someone leaves. It ends when someone stops fighting to stay. The last conversation, she came over 2 days later. Not to argue. Not to cry. To talk. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. The same table where we used to plan trips, argue about money, laugh over late dinners. Now it felt like a negotiation room. She told me she had ended things with him. That surprised me. But then she said something that hurt even more. I didn't end it for us. I ended it because I don't want to be that person. That's when it hit me. Even now, I wasn't the reason she chose honesty. The question that mattered, I asked her if she still loved me. She took a long breath. I care about you, she said. Not I love you. Care is what remains when love has already packed its bags. The truth about second chances, I told her I wanted to try again. I told her I was ready to change. She didn't dismiss it. She didn't mock it. She just said, I believe you mean it now. I just don't know if I can feel it again. That sentence ended the marriage more than any betrayal could have. What we decided, we didn't scream. We didn't blame. We chose to let go, not because we hated each other, but because holding on would have meant pretending. And pretending it already cost us years. Packing a life into boxes, watching her pack was surreal. Every object felt like a memory being quietly erased. Photos, books, small things I never noticed mattered until they were gone. She hugged me at the door. A long hug. The kind that feels like goodbye even when no one says the word. The aftermath, people assume heartbreak is loud. For me, it was silent. No dramatic collapse. No public breakdown. Just empty rooms and too much time to think. I kept wondering when exactly I lost her. There was no single moment. Just thousands of tiny ones where I chose comfort over connection. What I learned that being a good person isn't enough. Love requires attention, presence, effort, even when life gets busy, especially then. I learned that silence isn't peace. Sometimes it's resignation. Would I do anything different? Every day, I would listen more. I would ask questions and wait for real answers. I would stop assuming love was permanent just because it once was. The final truth, we didn't fail because we didn't love each other. We failed because we stopped choosing each other, and by the time I realized that, she had already chosen herself. Final line very important. If you're reading this and thinking, this sounds familiar, don't wait for a breaking point. Check in. Listen. Choose them before someone else reminds them what that feels like